My name is Julian. I am presiding over this meeting. Chair is attending remotely, so I'm presiding in person here. I'm calling to order at 6 p.m. And first thing of business is approval of the minutes. I want to table them until the next date certain due to a technical error that didn't allow them to be complete. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I think we can adopt by unanimous consent for that to consider this for the next meeting. Okay. Do we have any public comments online?
We do not have any public comments online or in person. Find us.
Well, in that case, we'll move to regular business and talk about the Transportation Improvement Program 2025 to 2030. It's an informational update. I believe John Carson Friendly presenting that. Or
Greg and John Martinson today. So Greg, you can share your screen.
All right.
What was yours?
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Greg Lucas. I'm a transportation engineer with the city of Issaquah. My first TAB meeting. I've been here since last June. You'll be seeing me a few more times in the next couple months. Today, we're talking about the Transportation Improvement Program for the year 2025 to 2030. So within the presentation, we'll give an overview of what the Transportation Improvement Program is, some of the funding sources that go into it, the previous TIP, what was used in the Master Mobility Master Plan project prioritization, and then also the CIP project selection criteria, finish with next steps with the TAB. The purpose of today's meeting is to create an understanding of the Transportation Improvement Program so that TAB can discuss setting the priorities in the February meeting and then review the draft TIP in March. We look to adopt it in June with the council. So what is the Transportation Improvement Program? It's a 6-year look at projects that are funded either with local funds or federal funds or grants or really any funded project. It lives in the TIP. Last year, the TIP was the transportation element of the 2024 to 2029 CIP. CIP has more than just the transportation projects, but that doesn't need to be updated every 2 years. And within there, you'll see all the projects that we have funded, what phase we expect to do. So you'll see design, property acquisition or right away, construction, planning. It gets updated every year, whether it's in the CIP or this year, the odd years where it's just the TIP itself. TIP's got a lot of different types of projects, maintenance projects that are funded via programs annually, safety mandated projects that are underway, long-term projects, new projects. basically any project that's got federal funds or local funds expected or currently funded. And then in the back of the TIP, you'll see projects kind of in the bullpen that don't have funds that could find its way into the TIP in future years. But projects that are consistent with the city's goals and policies that just don't have the funds for it. Projects underway, we got quite a few of those. Got projects under design are the Newport Way projects, SR 900 to 54th Street, Maple to Sunset. Also got a Northwest Sammamish Road non-motorized improvement projects. Recently started a planning study for a 990 multimodal crossing in central Issaquah. Also we're accepting a grant February to start the design of Juniper Street improvements, non-motorized trail. And then we've got an RFQ put together to start a process to select a consultant for a Gilman Bridge rehab project. So those projects will stay funded. Other projects, these are the annual projects, improvements for curb ramps, maintenance for pavement, concrete. We'll go through all these, but others kind of small wins for the small capital projects, other programs for maintaining things like the RFB, signal cabinets, a couple of the dynamic messaging signs, and some ITS plans. We've also got a few projects that, these are the mandated safety related stuff. So we got a side repair and selected a consultant to look at the black nugget wall behind Fred Meyer Home Depot. Updating that, other bridge related safety stuff. Also got some projects that'll make its way into the TIP that are identified in the ongoing transit study. Yeah, quite a bit of those. Also got a process to start implementing the ITS plan that was approved last year. That's, again, quite a bit of different things that you'll see in there. But yeah, I think we'll kind of develop a work plan for what gets implemented for the ITS plan and how it'll be field projects, studies, that kind of stuff, or how best to manage those funds. Here you kind of see the different types of funding the city of Issaquah gets for transportation projects. For example, the Transportation Improvement Boards, part of the gas tax for the state, that's grants that we applied for and hope to get. Other federal grants, a lot of those are federal grants. The ARPA was a COVID stimulus. City of Issaquah's got quite a bit of projects funded with. Same with the transportation alternatives programs, the federal grant. We also get money with some of the larger development agreements to help fund some of the impacted infrastructure. And then local funding, it funds through real estate excise tax, property sales. Recently approved was the Transportation Benefit District Fund, the Northwest Sammamish Parkway project, I believe, and some of the ITS projects. We also get money when development comes in, for the impact fees, mitigation fees, and then voter approved bond. And then we can also pull money from the general fund to fund some of our projects. This slide shows kind of how the projects were scored a couple years back during the implementation of the Mobility Master Plan. That predates my time here, but I think that plan kind of consolidated all the city's policies and goals, all the data into one document. Looked at all the projects they wanted to construct and then scored them. And that's kind of what went into the TIP a few years back, once the mobility master plan was implemented. And see the criteria and then how it's weighted. Each project was scored and then rated. That's how it was funded. Last year's, and there is, I think, some handouts for some of this. Both, you'll see the projects in last year's TIP, some information on the mobility master plan priorities, and then you'll also see what was used in the 2024 to 29 CIP for the transportation element. It was done a little bit differently, more in a visual sense of the matrix, where kind of color coded like a stoplight, green, yellow, red, and helps communicate better why certain projects are funded over other ones instead of a simple scoring. Similar type criteria, I think. Got the safety. I'll kind of hit the big ones. I think a big part of it was also just availability of funds. Make sure the projects that have federal funds are getting advanced. And then last day of next steps. So today I kind of want to just set the table for what the TIP is, talk about how projects were prioritized previously. Next month, we'd like to come back, talk about how we'd like to prioritize projects in the next TIP that we'd like to adopt this June. One change in the presentation, we'll take some of this information to the environmental board and have a discussion with them in March. And then we'll review and comment on the draft TIP in the March TAB meeting. Take discussion to the Mobility and Infrastructure Committee, do a public hearing, and then look to adopt it on June 17th. I got for you.
Okay. Do you have any questions from Cynthia or Dave or any of the other folks online? Cynthia?
Well, I want to begin, but I guess I will. I just wanted to make sure I understood. I'm not trying to catch you, but I just want to make sure. I think you said something at the beginning that's inconsistent with my understanding of the 6-year TIP. And you said only projects that are funded are on the 6-year TIP, but I thought that it was a bit of a chicken and egg thing, and it was only projects that there's likely to be funding and there might be targeted funding identified, but that it has to be on the TIP in order to be eligible for funding. That funding doesn't require it to have already been secured before it gets on the TIP. And I thought it was just the 2 years, the first 2 years of the 6 years is the only ones that are actually funded. Am I understanding that correctly, or did I misunderstand?
So if we got a project a few years out that we'd like to chase a grant with, which a lot of the kind of the 2030 projects may be candidates for, are projects that I mean, it's got to be, I think the term is fiscally constrained. So we've got to show how it's going to be funded within the TIP. But those funds don't necessarily have to be secured, but it's got to be within, the law kind of states reasonably funded, I think. So we'll for a federal grant, we'll show, we'll use some of our anticipated city funds, and then we'll expect to get a grant to fund the rest of it.
Thanks. That's helpful.
Any other questions online? No. Okay. You had a question, Tom?
Yeah, to follow up on that question, this is Tom. If something is planned out 5 years, there's a need that's identified 5 years out. Some city funds are set aside for it, but they're going to be applying for grants, what's a TIP or federal grants. If we don't get those, then that project could possibly slip out a year or two until we apply for grants.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that slips out another year, then another project may come in and take its place. Is that correct? Or was that project just slip out like another year?
Potentially, yeah. The projects can kind of, I mean, we just, for example, moved that Juniper Street project forward because we applied for a grant, happened to get it. So we're able to use existing match funds, it was shown, I think, at 25 and so stuff.
So it's a little bit of fluid in there, but.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
and projects that are slated to start in Silver in 2024, the ones that start in 2025, those are pretty much locked in then with all the funding available, opposed to any pending grants standing for those, or some of those that are planned for 2025 or 1 year out. They're still at risk if we don't get a grant. If it's not fully city funded, that might be bumped out here.
But I mean, I would say at least maybe
Or is that
2025, yeah, it's kind of maybe more of a John question, but definitely a little more flexibility. The later you're in the years, the more flexibility I think we have with it. If there is maybe something, there's an opportunity to shift funds around, but we want to make sure that we, fund all of our obligations.
So to go into the details on that one, looking at 2024, I'm going to say every one of them has funding, and then I'm going to put a giant asterisk on TR 22 Newport Way, SR 900 to Southeast 54th, because that one we've been awarded a grant, but in order to obligate the grant, we need to get our environmental approval or NEPA, and in order to do that, we needed to get a biological assessment reviewed. And yesterday, after 2 years, 7 months, and 1 day, we finally got review comments. And so we're going to ask for an extension on our grant. And so a lot of that work will get delayed a year, assuming our extension's granted.
How is the priority of certain projects? Like, how are they prioritized? Is it basically just from the this red, yellow, green chart, and then whatever funding's for? It's or how do you guys decide which project is going to be executed first?
Mind if I take this
Yeah,
one?
go for it.
All right, perfect. I'm glad you asked that question because I actually wanted to talk about this to help set the table for next meeting. And so there's two things. Well, more than two, but I'm going to try and keep it simple. So in the mobility master plan, and it's in your packet as one of the attachments, there's the setting the priorities. And we have that here, or if you're online, you can have the opportunity to look at that. So as part of when we wrote the mobility master plan, we looked at the guiding principles, came up with this project rating criteria. And so it looks at accidents, drive alone, access for people with disabilities. It looks at, is it something that we can implement? Does it increase multimodal capacity in central Issaquah? Increases route options, interconnectedness, reduces negative impacts to existing neighborhoods, increases capacity for motorized and or modes on arterial network. We looked at how does it better connect Issaquah with the region by leveraging regional investments and prepare for light rail. So projects that improve access to transit gap points, projects that build on funding from other agencies or partners than City of Issaquah, projects that create new connections to regional destinations, jobs and employment or residential centers. We also looked at the environment, projects that reduce single occupant vehicle use, projects that avoid politically sensitive areas, gave points for projects in the park strategic plan. It's a lot of the things that the Parks Department are trying to do with the green necklace are inside the right of way. And then looked at prioritization of maintenance along with capital investments. So from a tip point of view, we do try and utilize this. And what we want to do is have a very in-depth discussion about that next week, about how to use this. Do we want to make any tweaks to it? At the same time, also in your packet is what we did for the CIP. So the CIP, it's beyond just transportation. So they needed a format that would work for facilities, parks, utilities, transportation. And so it was a very simple green, yellow, and red. And so there's a matrix of how the different projects, what color they got, subjective. Next week, I don't really want to dive into this other than thinking of how maybe we can use this, but without changing the CIP one, just because the CIP selection criteria was developed citywide and with other departments. And so I don't want to tinker with things that involve other departments without involving them. But it would be great between now and next meeting if you guys could really spend some time looking at the project evaluation criteria, especially what we have in the mobility master plan. So I guess to circle back to the question, as we look, we have projects that are already underway, and that was a real high priority in the mobility master plan to keep those going. And so an example, oh, there's several examples, but like the Newport Way projects. But then we also have projects that come up because there is a maintenance or safety need. And so, for example, the bridge rehabilitation on Northwest Gilman Boulevard is an example of that. It wasn't even scored when the mobility master plan was done, but we did a bridge assessment. We realized that it needs a seismic rehabilitation to prepare for an earthquake, as well as in order to allow emergency vehicles to drive on the bridge. So so we got those different categories, but then for new projects, we do try and look at how well they do with the mobility master plan prioritization and keeping in mind the matrix of the different funding sources, because we may love a project, but if we can't fund it, then we might kind of keep that on the list for the future. And there be maybe a project that's good according to the mobility master plan, but not great, but we may have funding sources that we can't use for other projects that they score well for, so we might advance that too. So it's a balancing act of need, using the mobility master plan prioritization score, and figuring out what we can fund.
Dave, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Yeah.
So, John, I want to go back to the TR 22. If it is delayed this year, I see 3,710,000 in there for this year. What happens to that money for this year if it slipped all the way to next year? Does it just slide over?
So what the council will do, or so what the administration will ask council to do is include it in a budget, actually a budget reauthorization. So at the end of a budget year, money that's unspent that we want to carry forward to the next year, the finance department puts together a big agenda bill and lists all kinds of different work items, and council reauthorizes the money.
Okay, I get that. I guess my thought is this would be transportation related money for expense that we could pick up some other project this year that would be unfunded, and then slide it over. But I see that sliding scale on the financial summary on the out years, not only this year, but all the way through 2029, and then the out years beyond that. I guess my confusion is, as a former budgeteer, losing that money that goes out of transportation and goes someplace else that the city council sees. So I'm probably not right on, but I think you get my drift, that money could stay in the transportation arena to do something else if we lose this year. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I do, and the money that we have for that project really would be hard to put on anything else because it includes, I want to say, a $2.2 million federal grant that's only for this project. And then it also includes the rest of its 1 point whatever million, but a lot of that came from traffic impact fees. And so Newport Way SR 900 to 54th can be for the total cost up to, I want to say 30% funded with traffic impact fees. So technically that money could be freed up for other traffic impact fee eligible projects. But I will say we could not respond fast enough to spend that money on another traffic impact fee project. And we have a construction grant for phase 1 that we need to get ready for. And we've got that grant, I think it's about just a little bit more than $5 million grant in 2026. And so I'd really strongly recommend not moving that traffic impact fee to another project because then we would not be able to utilize a more than $5 million grant in 2026. So it's.
I get it. I get it. Follow on quick question. Do we lose that grant as well? Under that $2 million grant under the TR 22, do we lose that grant if we don't claim it this year?
Most likely, no. So we have to submit an extension request. And so the extension request is due on February 15th, and we're working on it now. We fully expect the extension request to be approved, but I guess in theory, the Puget Sound Regional Council could always say, no, we're not granting it, but I fully expect they will give us a 1-year extension on it.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Cynthia?
Thanks. Hey, thanks for putting this together. And I didn't say this before, but I really do appreciate that we're taking this material in sequence the way we are, getting the introduction and then getting to look at it and then discuss it and so forth. So I would definitely encourage all of us to spend some time on the projects themselves, just to, and even though the exercise is not going to be, you know, really into the weeds about each and every project, I still think that when you understand the projects, it helps you wrap your head around the whole thing. So I'll definitely make some time to do that. And a lot of these are very familiar, obviously, but that leads me to my question, which is, aside from the ITS items that are new, are there any other new items? And before you answer that, I want to say that I really appreciate the earlier question. I think it was Avi, about how does something get on there, and it kind of reminds me, some of you might be old enough to remember that Schoolhouse Rock, that I'm just a bill. Like, how does a law become a law? And it's like, I think it's like, I almost want this like graphic, you know, representation of how a project goes from not existing to completion and through all these cycles. And I know they come in from different ways, but I am curious, if you could just tell us off the top of your head. Obviously I could dig into the materials and compare side by side, but what's new on here besides ITS for this new TIP versus even last year's CIP or the TIP portion of the CIP?
So I will say that when we talk about what we're showing in the packet is the TIP from last year's CIP. And so we have not proposed any new projects, and we're not going to do that until after we talk about the prioritization criteria.
That makes a lot of sense. I was thinking this was like an early draft, but yes, that, of course, that makes sense. Thank you.
think we're all done. I don't have any questions myself. All the questions I was gonna ask have already been answered. So in that case, thanks for the information. The good information I provided about this. Looking forward to talking about this more next month. I suppose we can move to the TAB work plan in that case.
We're cruising tonight.
And
You'll have that animation done by next.
Erica? Erica has a question.
Oh, hey, Erica. Oh, you're on mute.
Hey, can you hear me now? Sorry about that. Sorry, I do have a question about I didn't know if we were gonna go over the like criteria like a little bit more independently or if we're just going over projects, but I did have a question about one of the criteria for one of the, sorry, I should have my question prepared a little bit more. I just didn't want to go on fast. For like the environmental aspect, I know that the red category was so maybe it wasn't environmental. I'm sorry, I don't have this together as well, but basically it weighted like reducing single occupancy vehicle trips at the same category of like red as I'm so sorry. Can I come back or maybe like type my question? I just didn't want to move on to like another section before I had got this thought out of my head.
Erica, what source is your criteria from? Is it from the sorry, I can't, is it from the capital, the department-wide, a multi-department one we did last year, or is it from the MMP? Because I was trying to follow along while you were asking your question. I was trying to figure out which source of criteria that would help.
It's from the MMP.
Okay.
Yeah.
It does say promote environment, whereas in the MMP, like when you reduce words down, it always is a little, you have to make decisions when you reduce words, but it's like, it says promote environmentally sustainable mobility, but I think it, like a better word is protect the environment, I think. I don't know, it's so weird.
Okay. I might just send a follow-up question to staff. It was basically, it had like weighted like reducing single occupancy trips with like no reduction. I just had a question about, that's probably a little bit in the weeds, but sorry, if we're ready to move on, I can just follow up.
Well, I love getting into questions about the understanding the project prioritization before we dive into it. So I love the question, even if it's not fully formed. Let me just look here, right? So as it was in the mobility master plan, we had under environment 3 different subcategories. So the first one was about projects that encourage travel to be less impactful on the environment, including shifting to non-auto modes. And so a project would score 4 points if it reduced single occupant vehicle use. And if it did not, then it would score 0. And I haven't done it, but it would be kind of curious to look at the projects to see how those points are given out. And then one that I wonder if we might want to consider tweaking or expanding is we have a category for projects that avoid sensitive areas. And so then we get 4 points for projects that avoid sensitive areas for water quality, but there's other environmentally sensitive areas. I guess one question that we might have next week is, do we want to change that to expand? Because yeah, there's sensitive areas for water quality. I'm not sure exactly if that means a creek or a wetland. I'm going to assume it does. But then we have, as a city, value tree protection. We value steep, hazard, like steep slopes and seismic risk areas. So there's other critical areas that the city has. But and maybe it is for a good reason, but right now the criteria only looks at water quality areas. And then the third one is parks that are included in or projects that are included in the park strategic plan also scored 4 points. So that's how the current environmental criteria is written. That answered what you're wondering, or do you want to dive into? Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. It did. That was exactly, yeah, the one you mentioned about the single occupancy vehicle. I was just kind of wondering, like, it was like a bit all or nothing, and I didn't know. Yeah, no, this is, you explaining that is helpful.
Great.
So along those lines too, part of what we should be doing as we look at these projects is looking at the guiding principles as well.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that we're going to change them, but those are what we have said in the mobility master plan, and it's how these fit in the guiding principles as well as the other criteria.
Yes, yeah, that's always a great one to, especially for this, because this project prioritization was based on the guiding principles. And so besides just understanding the technical, I think that's a great point you made, Tom, is to go back to the guiding principles and have that in mind too.
Yeah.
Thanks, sorry. So Tom and I were, I think the only people besides John in the room that were involved in putting together the MMP. And I have it printed out in a binder because I just keep looking back at it. But I definitely think that it would be useful to go back to page 44 of the MMP and see the original text. Because things have to get reduced for practical reasons. But when you go back to that, so it's page 44. And I have it flagged in my little printout, and I always refer back to it. And of course, it's never as wise as it seemed when we first, birthed it. There's lots of flaws, but it does give the full text, and it's, I think, helpful. And I like to look at it. Anyway, so I just would encourage us, and if you just Google MMP or Master Mobility Plan Issaquah, you can get right to it. And it starts on that criteria, it starts on page 44.
Right, and online, there's a link right to the mobility master plan that you can go right to it. And I think a couple of months ago, I put together, because we had this similar discussion, that I put together the guiding principles and the other criteria in a single page, so I could have a single page cheat sheet. If I can find that, I'll send that out. So everybody can have. But I'm not just taking, I just took it out of the mobility master plan, put it on one sheet because it's easier for me to refer to.
Great. Feel free to share that. Cool. Well, I think in that case, if anyone doesn't have any more questions, we can go and move on to the TAB Workplan, which is an action item.
Yes. Okay. All right. Okay, so yes, I am John Larson Friend. I'm Transportation Program Coordinator here at the city. And I'm here to talk to you all about the 2024 TAB Work Plan, which is sort of a new idea. We've had work plans over time, but nothing so formal as this. It is actually written into the kind of the outline of how TAB works in code, that we're supposed to have a work plan, but it hasn't happened so far. So we are working with the clerk's office to kind of get that underway. So the purpose this evening is to basically present you all with the current work plan as it's written, discuss the various topics, and then basically we're going to finalize for council approval. So the action is not adopting it, but it's approving it so we can go to council so they can look at it and say yes, and we can adopt it later. So the direction needed this evening is requesting your approval to present the work plan to City Council for review. As I mentioned, the work plan idea has been sort of a loose idea as of the last few years since TAB started. But now the city is working to finalize or formalize that idea for all different boards and councils. Well, boards, not specific councils. And TAB was selected as one of 4 boards out of that list that I've shown you all of boards, 4 of those boards to basically pilot this work idea. The work group that I wasn't personally a part of, but they presented what they found. They looked at other cities' work plans, and basically the clerks created kind of our own version of what the work, which is sitting in front of you. It looks at the whole year. There will be a follow-up meeting. I don't know if it'll be February, it might be March, I might be wrong. And then one correction I already made in the PowerPoint is today is about reviewing and not adopting. I don't know why I adopted. It's just creating a PowerPoint. Wrote it in. So the first thing, the first section, so there's 3 different sections. 2 of them have items in them. That future section that is not included in this PowerPoint, but it's included in your packet. That future section is basically projects that we might look at in years to come. So 2025 and beyond. We don't have any specific topics on deck at this point, but when we come back to review work plan in July, then there might be some at that point. So first of all, we have our annual work plan discussion. That's tonight, and then we'll have another one in July, as I mentioned. And then separated out from that is the annual work plan adoption. As I mentioned, there's a council approval portion that basically the council will look at the work plan after you have looked at it, approved it, and then hopefully approve it themselves to then be adopted in March, as we have on here. In July, we won't have to go through that council process. They're just going to assume that any updates we make are good. That's basically what the clerk's office has told me. As usual, May is the election of the chair and vice chair. Every year there's an open public meetings training that the clerk's office usually comes in and conducts. That's either personally or as a group. I think there's rules about like biannually it has to be the group, and otherwise it's new members every year or something like that. They still wanted us to put it into the work plan, and that would be June. And then there's also baked into the TAB rules an annual report that goes to City Council, which I don't know if we've ever done before. I could be wrong, but I wasn't aware of it for a month ago. So in October, in some form, whether that's an email or a formal presentation, you still have to work that out, I think. There would be a report of some kind that would go to City Council to let them know how things are going. So, any questions about the admin?
I had a question about all the admin items. I remember in previous years, we used to have the racial equity training.
Okay.
Some, when new members, I think, were put on. I think last time that it happened was like April or something like that, or May. So I think that would be something to consider adding if possible.
Yeah. Would that be something you would want to formally add to the items on this work plan, or have us keep it in mind to move forward on?
I think it would be good to just add it on to this administrative list.
Okay, great. Then we will look at what that looks like. Great.
Yeah, if I'm remembering all right, last year it was on a Saturday or something. It wasn't during like the regularly scheduled TAB time. It was very optional, or there was like a couple different dates to choose from, and I'm sure that was just dependent on like the trainer's availability. And I don't know if it's worth just building into our standing meeting time or what. I think it was all the city boards, the folks on the boards and commissions had to pick a date for them to attend. Anyways, I didn't like think the communication around it was like as good as it probably could have been. And so I did end up attending, but yeah.
That does sound familiar. Okay, I'll look into that.
Any other questions about this list?
As you can see, I have a scheduled and potential dates. All these are scheduled, unlike the next sections.
Cynthia?
Oh, 30th.
Sorry, Julian, could you just repeat what you were requesting be added to this?
I was thinking, the equity training that's usually done, particularly, since I got onto the board in 2021. I think we did it in 21, 22, 23 as well. So that's what I was requesting.
I'm glad I asked the question again because I missed the word equity and I didn't know what kind of training you were talking about. So I think that's a fantastic idea. And I think that if we're serious about equity, then it should be on this page. I'm in favor of seeing what we can do to get that on to that. I don't know if it's administrative. I don't know, but I think that that's an ongoing discussion, an ongoing education. And if we're serious about equity, it can't just be something we do every once in a while. So I like that idea, Julian. I'm glad I asked because I didn't catch that the first time. And it's not just up to me. I mean, I don't know what other people think, but I'm just gonna put that out there.
Do we have consensus about the importance of putting this, or at least considering putting on this administrative list?
I would say yes, it's quite an important issue, and if it's included in one of our meetings, then that would be a good thing.
Yeah, I think we should add that. I don't know that it's necessary to do it every year. We have enough change in our board. What we were told last year is that the city has to pay. It's not something in-house. It was a contracted service, and I don't know that it's a good use of our money to go pay every year.
One suggestion is, could we combine other boards into a meeting so we can get more people into the meeting, and then we also get to meet some of the other people at the same time. That may be one way to group it together.
I like that, Tom.
I mean, even if there's, fewer, even if there's, the same number of people, we don't have a lot of changeover. Particularly since last year, we have had a couple of new folks join our board, and even if I've been here for 3 years almost, I think it's still important to refresh our conversations about this every year. So. Okay. Great.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, I'm not very good at being remote. I think it was Micah that mentioned a concern about cost. Would it make you more comfortable if we put language in there about, some kind of cost-effective way to be, perhaps consider joining with other departments or something? Just because I think frequency is more important than a small, intimate group.
I like Tom's suggestion of working with other boards.
Great.
I think that the cross-board communication is something that we're missing.
Ah,
I know there's reasons why. So yeah, that would certainly address a lot of it. I don't really like the idea of paying a contractor or come in to talk to maybe what will be 5 people. That just seems inefficient use of city resources.
thanks.
So if I were to work with the clerk's office and other boards, I assume, and could get a date nailed in, that would work for everybody within the next month, I guess, when we have to get this done to council. I could put that in, but if there's not enough time to do that, I could put it in like a tentative category as well. That's also an option. Because there's also, yeah, there's also timing for getting this to council as well.
Dave, you're raising your hand?
Yeah, quick one. When I was on the cemetery board, we not only had the Open Public Meetings Act, but we had the Public Records Act. And I guess I missed in the discussion when you would insert the equity training. Can it be all that same time frame in June?
That's a great question. And the reason why you didn't hear an answer is because we didn't know yet. That's a possibility.
So I've got a question to the TAB. So, and I don't know one way or another whether a consultant's on the table, whether it's being planned. But going with the scenario, let's say that's not being planned the way it was last time. Would the TAB want a discussion on equity where we would, as a staff group, come with what we're seeing in the region? Because like when we talk about our funding partners in some of our grant competitions, there's equity, a lot of effort that's been put into incorporating equity into funding projects. And the state's also looking at that as they have that. And I don't know how much of a discussion it would be, but or how to turn it into a discussion, but it could be a share to try and incorporate equity to talk about. And I'm not even sure because I'd have to look at how the different grant competitions are doing it, but we're seeing it on our end, that equity is getting incorporated into how projects are being prioritized. And maybe we could come up with a discussion on that as a way to incorporate equity. And I wanted to see what people thought.
That's a good point. Anyone had any feedback? Erica?
Yeah, and I think I've made similar comments in the past, whether it was in the actual equity training itself or when we were talking about doing equity training about like the more kind of narrowly tailored to transportation and transit issues, I think the more valuable, it's always valuable, but the more valuable it will be for our boards specifically. I've never attended an equity training that was narrowly tailored to transportation, and I would just love that. I'm sure it exists out there, or even if it's not, a trainer with us, if it's we get some good materials on it in addition to a broader equity training. I'm sure this exists somewhere. I don't know if Metro has plenty of documents on this too, but or if they maybe use it like someone specific for their training, but I'm just spitballing here. But yeah, I've definitely like raised this in the past, and I would love to dive into that.
I definitely concur with Erica's thoughts about trying to make sure that because there's especially in the past decades we have had problems of equity and transportation and that whole issue of highways going through communities of color and all of that. So I've always thought that having transportation, equity focused transportation session would be kind of nice.
Yeah, we'll make something for sure. Yeah. Okay, great. I'll look into that. I'll see what the clerk's office is doing on their end. I'll see what other boards are doing, and I'll figure out something. Good. Anything else before I move on to the next section? Everybody. All right, so let's move on to actual work plan items. So as I mentioned before, we have our gray, which they are the scheduled items. Theoretically, they will move. And then I have some potential dates too, which I was trying to avoid potential dates, but some of these projects, staff members weren't quite ready to commit to a specific month, or not, they don't even know what the question that they would ask, they need to come and ask. questions about their project, get information from you all. So I'll run through these one by one, and then at the end of each item, I'll ask if anyone has questions, if they're description. A couple folks here whose projects are, well, all three of us have projects on this list, so we're more than happy to expand. So this one may look familiar. So this was tonight's topic, the Transportation Improvement Program. Basically providing an overview of the 6-year TIP, and then moving into the other sections. This, of course, is this month, February and March, so it's going to be a 3-month block of discussions. Introduction tonight, and then the next 2 meetings will go more in depth. That was already pretty much, you already described everything. Does anyone have any questions about where this is going? I think you probably already got your questions out before, but just wanted to ask anyway. Great. Traffic calming. So I know that I said last month that this would be coming back this month, but I think Cynthia mentioned in the meeting, are you sure you want to come back in January? And she was right. I did not want to come back in January. So because of the, well, thankfully, because Tip needed time 3 months to present, I get to come back in April, so I have some time to get things together. We did have our staff collaborator meeting yesterday. That was yesterday. Is that crazy? So we had that yesterday. It went very well. And so I want to make sure that you all know that in basically the plan outline, I ended up switching 2 items around. That would be had TAB and then I think policy dive, or I can't remember what I called it. I switched those 2 around. So I'm going to go in and do some intensive research and start kind of crafting some things. And then I will come back to you all in April for that post collaborator feedback and whatever work has been done at that point. We also have a plan to do some public engagement, hopefully in June. So there might be some questions in April about the public engagement process as well. And then hopefully if everything goes well, I'll come back in July for the policy approval for you all, which would be really exciting. So any questions about where that's going? Great. This came to us from sustainability department. So David Reedy will be coming in April and presenting on the 2022 greenhouse gas inventory that they just completed. They completed it for both community and government operations. So they wanted to come and basically show you all what they found. I don't have any other information other than that. So I won't take any questions. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Just one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the greenhouse gas inventory, are they looking at both traffic, manufacturing, everything that adds to it?
As far as I know, I think it's all the above. Yeah, I think it was comprehensive. Yeah. Yeah, that'll be exciting. This is my project. So this is the Squawk Mountain Non-Motorized Improvement Project. I have been working with a consultant since mid last year at least. And we've been working on, it's basically the 12th and Mount Olympus corridor up in Squawk. It doesn't have any sidewalk. Speeds are relatively high. And they're based on our public feedback. We went through a big survey process. There is a huge demand for sidewalk, especially coming down to Tibbetts Park. So we've been working with them on basically design alternatives. So we've developed at least a few now. So we should, and I have this as yellow, tentative. We were scheduled to come to you all, I think, in April, due to some background policy work that we're working on. We've had to push this project back, timeline back at least a month or two. So hopefully we'll come back with this, or come to you with this project in May or June, and then there's a second post secondary public engagement process, and going into hopefully what will be the final design recommendation by the community. Hopefully that public feedback will kind of determine which of the designs is most popular, and which one we'll move forward with. So we'll hopefully come back with that design in September or October to present to you all before moving forward. So yeah.
Question, are they still looking at sidewalk on one side versus both sides to try and save some of the trees that they talked about a while back?
That is on the table. Yes. In fact, I don't think we're moving forward with any double-sided ones. So it's a whole thing.
Yeah, without going into it too much, there's parts of the city code that require a planter strip, and there's no deviation for anything. So we've been talking to the people, the land use planners, because that's where the planter strip code resides. We want to present options to the community, and we don't think that the community wants to see an option that would kill 179 trees.
Yes, 179.
So
We have a sidewalk on one side in our neighborhood, that works fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we fully understand the code implications and how to go about that, because we don't want to ask the community for something and then the people who permit a project like, well, sorry, can't do that. And so we're working out some code conflicts ahead of time.
I think we're still waiting on plan. But hopefully by May or June we'll have that answer.
Yeah, because it seems like you could apply the practicality. Doesn't make sense on some of those.
Yes. Yeah. Any other questions about that? Excited to bring it back in the spring to you all. Next stop is concurrency. This would be June and November. So this year, the city is evaluating the transportation concurrency system for alignment with the MMP's guiding principles. If the system is not found to be in alignment, the TAB will provide feedback about the development of concurrency prototypes. John, do you want to expand on that any?
Yes, I can do that. So one of the things in the mobility master plan that was listed as an action was exactly this. So the city has a concurrency system, and I'll try and explain it. It can get kind of complicated, but the way transportation concurrency works is the idea is as growth occurs in the city of Issaquah, we want transportation improvements to happen concurrently with growth. And when we say concurrently, within the 6-year TIP. And so a developer, let's say a developer wants to build a 400-unit apartment complex. And then we have a formula that says, okay, they're going to generate X number of trips that are taken from the trip bank. So we have, we know how much capacity we have based on how many projects that we're going to build and how our existing system works. And then they start subtracting from that trip bank. And we currently have a concurrency system that is based on delay at a signalized intersection. And so our current standard is D, which I forget how many seconds of delay that is, but basically A, like what you wanted in school, is the best. There is an E and F, but as a city, we've said we want D or better. And so what we're going to do as part of this is to look at our current system and the guiding principles and first ask the question, are they in alignment, or yes or no? And then if they're not, then what? What are the options? Now, obviously, if they are, then the project would be over. But going with that we have tentatively scheduled June and November, but I do need to verify that with the consultant to make sure that that is the right time frame.
I have a question about, like what that would be considering, you know, like, sometimes says that, well, you know, move it to like E standard or something like that. Is that the case, or is there consideration of possible moving it to like the multimodal concurrency standard, something like that?
Well, that's what we'll
Yeah,
talk about.
That's what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
so
That's just nice.
without going, I'll probably go into it too much, but I think it's kind of exciting. There's several agencies. Redmond has a multimodal system. They use a mobility unit. I don't quite understand it and how it works, but they have that. Bellingham has another system that incorporates multimodal. There could be ways to tweak ours, where maybe we could say, well, the standard is D, but in these areas, we want more multimodal, so we're willing to live with E or F because we would rather give transit priority or bike or ped priority. I'm kind of getting ahead, but those are some of the options. I actually basically see the options are stay the same, modify the current one, follow Bellingham, follow Redmond. I guess there could be a fifth option. I'm not creative enough to know what that would be.
Questions?
Yeah, no questions.
Black Nugget Road. So this is a project, Jim Jacoby, one of our transportation engineers, will be bringing this one in June. Looking at feedback on roadway options for the Black Nugget Road project. So getting more in depth on that. The city is beginning preliminary evaluation of alternatives to rehabilitate or replace the 1,000-foot long and up to 35-foot tall, 35-foot tall retaining wall on Southeast Black Nugget Road, as well as potential roadway improvements adjacent to the wall. The city will be seeking TAB input on potential roadway and wall improvements, including turn lane alternatives, sidewalks, bike lanes, and aesthetics. So, wall.
We well of Issaquah.
Yeah.
To clarify, to build off of our previous discussions on this, this is to basically not really look at a cross section necessarily, right?
Potentially.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I can speak a little bit to that one. So they're going to be looking, the primary purpose of that project is to replace the wall. And from a geotechnical engineering point of view, they'll be investigating it and coming up with options. And then while we're constructing it, as we look at, okay, if the wall is in front of the existing wall, that's where the sidewalk is. So then the sidewalk comes in. Hey, what do we want to do with the road? Is it one where we would replace the wall in its current location? Do we want to try and make room for bike lanes or not? And I haven't even seen what the consultants come up with. They are just barely getting started, but that's kind of how I see the conversation of primarily the wall, but while we're doing the wall, the road, and how it all ties together into one project. Tom?
Okay, I think that was answering my question. Just thinking, as long as we replace the wall, what can we do? Can we move back a little bit to, you know, squeeze a little bit more into the roadway? Is in there for a bike or a sidewalk on the side? That's the
Right.
idea.
Wall that looks like it was built in 1840. It wasn't.
Seems like it never had the fascia put on, just
Yeah.
soil nails, tiebacks, and
I-90 crossing. This one's very exciting. So this is Greg will be introducing the ongoing planning process for the Central Issaquah multimodal I-90 crossing project sometime in between Q2 and Q4. Do you want to say anything else about it?
Yeah, I'm kind of workshopping how best to discuss it with you guys, but the goal is to kind of have a preferred alternative on what a crossing could look like across I-90 this fall, this winter. Currently, we're downloading all the existing information, projecting with land use what the future conditions will look like. And so we're kind of in a fact finding stage. We know where we want to get. So the question is kind of between once we kind of know some more about what we're dealing with and where we want to go, how do we, want to integrate this tab? So I kind of see us coming here 3 times between now and the end of that project. I just don't know enough to really have a good plan for that.
Any questions on that?
So this first meeting is essentially introduction and basic workshop.
Yeah.
You're all going to collectively design the overview. All right. Just a few more. Signal timing policy. Nick Green, who was here last month, will be coming again sometime between Q3 and Q4 to seek feedback on policy for operating signalized intersections. This is a big topic, and I know you were in a meeting about it earlier. Do you want to talk about it at all?
Yeah, so this is one we also want to do concurrently with concurrency. Because as we're looking at our level of service, especially at signalized intersection, policy discussions could be talking about different things like leading pedestrian interval or transit priority and who knows what else. But we do want to do this concurrently with concurrency because I think those two really tie in very closely together.
Okay. Mobility master plan. Thomas Driz will be coming again sometime between August and December. Staff will be requesting feedback, post updates for the mobility master plan to enhance the implementation of the transportation element of the comp plan, which is also being updated in parallel since those 2 documents are separate, but definitely feed into each other and affect each other. So he will be. Yes.
Yeah, it'd be good to know if we can do any updates to the MMP, if there's any specific areas we want to look at to reading the thing.
I'm sure, yeah, I think he'll have something along those lines. And I think I asked about if he was going to return with the transportation element. It sounds like he might do an email update for you all at some point. So that might also inform that as well. Any questions about the MMP? Cynthia?
So I always get confused about this timing and the cycles and the minor updates and the major updates and the annual updates and the 7-year, is it 10-year, 5-year? Is this a major or minor update? Or something in between?
Yeah, so the comp plan is a major update. And then
That's right.
The mobility master plan update, that I couldn't tell you what Thomas has planned.
I mean, I would think theoretically, if there's a major update happening with comp plan, there might be a major update with MMPs to match it, but I don't know.
I'm going to guess that it would incorporate the transit plan, and I'm guessing maybe an update to the actions in the mobility master plan, because we've actually made quite a bit of progress on the actions listed.
We'll find out in August. No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
The changes in the MMP would drive comp plan update. Comp plan driving the MMP.
Comp plan would drive MMP.
Yeah,
Because comp plan is state mandated and we're in that cycle right now.
The comp plan is July 31st for us, or
That sounds close. Yeah.
some cities have it mid-2024, some cities have it
Right.
mid-2025.
Actually, I don't know which. I'll have to look at. It is this year though, for sure. Great. Yeah, so I think this is the last one. So light rail visioning. This is also a big topic coming down The rails, sure. So staff will seek feedback on proposed light rail vision and set guiding principles to guide light rail station decisions. Again, this is sometime basically in the fall or early winter. So this is, so basically when I believe that the plan is once Thomas is either complete or almost complete with the transit study, then he would move into the light rail visioning portion of the long range planning. This is in preparation for I believe the sound transit planning process for Issaquah light rail, which is scheduled for 2041. 2020, what?
Oh, it got delayed to 2044.
Oh, okay, I've been holding on to 2041. So 2044. But the planning process, regardless of 2041 or 44, the planning process starts in 2027. So we have 3 years to get going on that. Basically to indicate to Sound Transit that we're serious, and we'll have a whole bunch of things in a row by the time they get to that process start time. 2044.
Got to use my walker to take the train to go down.
Bought a whole other car with the taxes they took from me.
About like the sequencing, like of the I-90 crossing and the light rail visioning, I feel like those kind of go in hand. I mean, depending on where it ultimately is decided, because in case we think that the light rail station is best placed, or the I-90 crossing will be, or close to that, then those car stations will definitely be very closely connected. So I'm just wondering what the sequence would be and what everyone's thinking about. Yeah, if we should try to have that any crossing discussion first, the light rail visioning first, or maybe at the same meeting. What's the consensus is there?
I think for TAB discussion that they should be 2 separate discussions, because I think we'll have 2 separate questions. But as we do both, both are very closely tied together, because the I-90 crossing needs to be compatible with the light rail station, whether the light rail station is in the middle of the freeway where the crossing's at, or if it's somewhere else in Issaquah. But they're very closely related, but I believe we're going to have separate set of discussions. But light rail compatibility is a huge part of the I-90 crossing study.
Any questions about that? Right. Well, that's the last one. Before I get to this, I do want to ask, just in case, if there are any topics that somehow we as the admin forgot, or seems like there might be something glaringly missing or anything like that. Just wanted to put that out there, just in case. Erica.
I guess it's not necessarily something we would give feedback on. I get what is the like feedback loop for Metroplex? Like, will we get an update on that? Or I don't know if that's just in a staff report down the line, or.
That is a great question. I just got the first mini batch of data yesterday. So we have a relatively okay idea. I think I'm getting a full report at the end by the end of the week. I need to think about that, actually. I would imagine it would probably be like an email update of some kind, you know, hey, this is what it looks like. We're 6 months in, or something like that. But that is something I'm glad you asked about that. Yeah.
Thanks.
I think it's something that we can talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good, because we had some discussion on that in options. So it'd be nice to know how it's working and kind of come back around if we had an input on something. How did it turn out? How does it work?
I can confirm that it's being pretty highly utilized, and unfortunately, that's the biggest indicator of that is the wait times are going up. So we're looking at that to see if that's coming out. So, but yeah, it seems to be very popular. Hopefully not so popular that it's not working for people. That's the issue that I'm kind of thinking. Yeah, that's Cynthia.
So maybe this is a little bit picky, but I do think that follow-up on things that we've worked on is important, but I don't think it's the same as the work plan. So I do think that what we had to get away from a couple years ago was a lot of updates. We kind of started to get a little update heavy, and we felt like we weren't really being utilized. And I feel like this is a really meaty work plan. And I think that maybe somewhere we need to document, put a pin in that. I think follow-up is really satisfying. It helps make our work feel more, satisfying. So I think it's an important concept, but I just don't want our work plan to get like bogged down with updates or follow-ups or whatever. And they can also be, an email if we don't have enough time, or that sort of thing. So I'm being a little nitpicky, but I just want to be really, I guess I'm really protective of our work plan. Thanks.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just so you all know, I have an active spreadsheet that I keep track of all the topics, and I have a calendar ping the first week of every month to follow up. I think on the 2 months ago topic to see if there's a. So that's why I sometimes will send out emails about different updates and stuff like that. So I am actively thinking about that. So thank you, Cynthia. Dave.
Sorry, it took me a little longer to unmute than I thought. Thanks for that question, Cynthia. I guess in looking at the work plan, I don't think it's over encumbered with updates. I didn't see it that way, Cynthia, but that's just one little bit of feedback. I think it cuts across the grain really well, and I'm really glad that the comment was made about an update on God, I love it when you get old and the thing is right there and you can't say it. It just won't come out. What did we just ask for an update on?
Oh, Metroflex.
Yeah, Metroflex. Thanks. That's the word I was trying to get out, and it finally got there. And I think that's really a great idea that we get an update on Metroflex, but that doesn't have to be soon. That can be later when you get more details from them. I really want to see that information for sure. So just feedback for you, Cynthia. I don't see a whole bunch of updates in this work plan. I would say if the administration tonight wants that vote, I'd be comfortable on voting for what I see as the work plan.
Cynthia, do you want to?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I was saying in past years, couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, we were update heavy. I think this is really meaty. I think this work plan is great. I think updates are important, but I was speaking of years past. So I too am supportive of this, and so thanks.
Great. We have consensus to add an update to 6-month update or whatever it may be, about how it's going. Metroplex.
You want that in the? I thought I was hearing not in the work plan, but definitely one. Is that the version?
I think it's the update, unless people are thinking otherwise. I think the update through email or just comment at a meeting. That was consensus, so that I might be mistaken. So unless I don't have that correctly, then. Yeah, I mean, I think there's be comment or Dave?
By not putting in the work plan, doesn't that give the flexibility on when you can add it into an evening? I mean, it could be any time, that update could come anytime, correct? You could
That's
just
true. Yeah.
say in
Especially-
your advance notice out to us, I've got an update on Metroflex, and it's included in tonight's. It doesn't have to. It seems to me not putting in the work plan leaves you flexibility to be able to get it and then get it out to us.
I'd be. It's top of mind, so I won't.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess perhaps not putting in there, but I think what we were previously discussing, or what I was previously discussing about like equity into that straight. So that's, I'm not sure if we want to just make an amendment to this thing, or just
I think, oh, go ahead, sorry.
to approve this, to present it, with that in mind.
I was thinking somebody could make a motion, since we put in action, somebody could make a motion to move the work plan to city council for approval with the amendment of adding the equities or something like that. And then second to vote. That's what I was. So I'll let you call that.
Cool. Well, does anyone want to move does anyone want to move to approve to present the work plan to city council for review? Or I'll move it. I'll move it. Does anyone want seconds? Dave, are you seconding?
I second.
And then for the amendment, I'll move to add the.
I think we have to have a motion in a second. You have to vote.
And then don't we do?
It would be an
Do it all
addition,
in one.
but you've already now had a second, so you can't add to a motion that way. That's against Robert's rules. You can just do it as a thing after you do this.
Oh,
It's the
okay.
easiest way to do it.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
But you could also withdraw the motion and make a motion that includes the amendment, couldn't you? I mean, couldn't you just make a
Yes.
new, couldn't you withdraw the motion? Micah knows the stuff, so to speak.
Although I don't remember once something seconded, whether you're supposed to vote, can you withdraw a second motion? I would say just vote and then just make another one, right? Because it's gonna affect the same outcome, so.
Okay, well, in that case, we'll take a vote about this motion. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right,
None opposed. Cool, well, that passes, and then I'll move to add the equity training component into the administrative items of the work plan. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Great, and then we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay, yes, because I, like I said before, I think it should be, if it's done, it should not be done at a board level, because I don't think that's a efficient use of city resources. I like Tom's suggestion about doing it at a across multiple boards if you're gonna do it.
I think we have that through. I guess what I should have done is we should have had that discussion about.
That's fine. I mean, I think
think this
John
is-
heard it
I think this is
anyway.
flexibility. I think this is flexibility we've talked about, wanting to do this with other boards as well.
Yeah.
So there's obviously has flexibility. I hope it's.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, great. Is Dave's hand still up or is it up again?
no, it's up again.
Go ahead.
So just to give you some history from another board that I was on, we were able to get multi-boards to do the Open Public Meetings Act, the Public Records Act, And there was another thing that we talked about. And my guess is they could also include equity in there at the same time, and it could be multiple boards. That's past history of the city. So I believe it can be done.
Okay. Great. All right. Last thing, next steps, we will take the work plan to city council for approval, and then upon council approval in February, we'll return to you in March for adoption, which should be quick. All right.
Okay. Thanks, John. And now we'll move on to reports.
I wanted to see if we could get audience comments, because we had a member of the community, but the link in the agenda wasn't good, and so she wasn't able to join.
Oh, okay, sure. Okay, Connie, you have 5 minutes.
Oh, there. Wow. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. I tried for a long time to get on and finally I was able to. So I'm going to Connie Marsh. I live on Squawk. And I wasn't able to hear what you said, but I was rereading the project prioritization criteria table for the TIP. And I think it needs a review because it seems like there's a duplication of many things, and then there's a lot of words in there that make it so that I don't understand when it would be counted. For example, how tight does something have to be in the park strategic plan to get 4 points? I don't understand why you don't get a negative number if you actually negatively impact a neighborhood. You can only get positive points. And so I think that just in general needs refinement. We went through a TIP last time, and I remember the committee not being entirely happy with the results of it. And so I don't know if you went to that conclusion or not, but there's my input there. And so, down to your work plan, we have had multimodal concurrency in the past. It was called planned capacity. And the city council worked on that for years and they were ahead of their time. So you might go back before what we already did, what we have now, to what they did for planned capacity and see what their successes and failures were for that. As you start refining multimodal, measuring multimodal. And also, if you don't get WashDOT in with your concurrency, we are going to end up in the same situation that we are now. Now, the idea of reports coming back to you all the time, the city has a place on the website for data. And so I was wondering, because I can't remember, if you all have figured out what you want to have measured. So what do you perceive success, and what items do you want to know that about? And those are the things that you could have your own transportation data platform where not just you, but the public could see things like how well is Metroflex working? Because these dashboards, I think they're really important to understand if you think you're going where you want. And so I would actually add that to a work item, because I don't remember having that tight of a discussion with the TAB. What is success? What do you want to measure there to show it? If that makes sense to you. So I appreciate you letting me talk for a minute here at the end. I know the discussion is already sort of done, but at least you get to hear it a little bit. Thank you.
Thanks, Connie. I'm not sure if anyone can speak to like the data dashboard stuff, and then what that where the progress is on that.
So we have, I know enough to speak, but not well enough. I know we have a performance dashboard on the city's website, and we've got a team in the exec office who is doing a lot with data, and we have a staff team working on it and working with the Bloomberg Institute to, I forget what sort of certification we ended up getting, but really trying to make data-driven decisions. So I don't know quite how to answer your question, but I know that Dale in the executive office is doing a lot with data and looking at how we can utilize it.
I can speak to it a little bit. So data management has become, I think it's moving towards a very top priority, if it isn't already a top priority. In fact, let's see, I've taken 3 trainings in this room over the last week about data management and whatnot, and there were 20 people in that class, so at least. So, and not to mention I think the dashboard on the website has been revamped as of, I think, last week. So I think that there is a lot of progress going in toward making all of our data very transparent. And I think the biggest reason why some data isn't available is just because we haven't had the staff resources, we haven't had the training, and haven't had the time or resources to actually get all of that data out there. So I think the city's moving in a great direction when it comes to data. It's just going to take a little time. I don't think it's going to take as much time as everyone thinks it might, but I think.
I know there's a little thing that says data dashboard on the scrolling page.
Yeah, it's very cool. I really like it. With more data points on the way, I think, especially following the training we took this last week. It was very robust. And I saw, including me, like there were a lot of light bulbs in the room. I have that data. So yeah, great question.
Cool. Well, in that case, now we can move to reports. We already pretty much covered board work plan. So we can
Board
go
work
over
plan.
that.
Yeah, adopted.
Yeah.
No, not adopted. But
And staff report.
yes, I have a few items here. First, since Connie's here, it looks like that link on the agenda was broken. I don't know how that happened, but I see it now. I will get that fixed for meetings moving forward. It's probably because when we redid the new year of meetings, it probably switched the link. I didn't ask
Or
staff or clerk's office to change it.
because Teams got updated.
Teams got updated too, like it could have been a few. So I'll add that to the list of things to check before meetings. As mentioned before, the transportation tax, the improvement district tax passed. That tax will begin in April. It's projected to make 2.2 million annually for the city, and the staff is anticipating, Northwest Sammamish non-motorized improvement project and ITS both adopting the CIP will be funded largely through that, which is very exciting. And then Micah, you had a question last month about Sunset Front intersection and how the intersection works and timing and stuff. So we will include that discussion with the signal timing policy later this year. We'll provide some basic information about traffic signal timing, and then we might be able to use that as intersection as an example, since it's such a pertinent, very important intersection of the city. So that concludes staff report.
Okay. Chair reports. Cynthia, you'll be sharing something.
Yeah, so Julian is functioning as a chair this evening, and he indulged me and let me make the chair report tonight. So thank you, and thank you for covering for me. I wanted to just remind everybody that recruitment is for board members will open up soon, and I think they'll be due before we meet again. And I'm happy to say we have a full roster right now, and I have reason to believe that the 2 people who are up for renewal this year will be pursuing, hopefully being continuing on the board. So what that leaves us is hopefully with a full board, but it does, we could still use some alternates. And so if you know of people that you think would be a great addition to this board, please encourage them to apply. And then the other thing is I wanted to say that we were asked for TAB participation on the mayor's strategic plan update task force. So that's going to be happening this year, sometime probably but by the end of Q2, I think. And so Julian will be representing TAB on that. And there's just a couple of boards that have representation on that task force. So it's always nice that TAB gets asked. So thanks, Julian, for doing that. And I just want everybody to know about that. That's all I have. Thanks.
Cynthia, youth report, you have something on?
Yeah, here, sorry, I wrote it down.
We have a youth report, everybody.
All right, just having people on.
Yeah, so I conducted a survey about the general satisfaction of the Issaquah road network, and this includes like maintenance, including snow and ice mitigation and removal, and then traffic safety and usability of the roads. So for the respondents of the survey, I just made a Google form and sent it to a lot of my peers at Issaquah High School. So it's Issaquah High School students with a permit or license, and I got 40 responses. So my first question was the general satisfaction of the roads rated on a scale between 1 and 5. So 1 is extremely dissatisfied with the roads being a complete nightmare, and 5 is extremely satisfied and the roads are perfect. So 10% of respondents rated the roads a 1, 45% of respondents rated the roads a 2, 27.5% of respondents rated the roads a 3, 17.5% of the respondents rated the roads a 4, and then nobody rated the roads a 5, unfortunately. So then I asked people what they like about the roads and what their concerns are about the roads. So what people appreciated was that maintenance crews are generally fast at fixing issues, and there's easy access to I-90. And then also there's like the roads, there's a lot of nice aesthetic features like trees in the medians and stuff like that. And there's still enough space for large SUVs that a lot of people drive to like navigate through the streets. And there's also nice twisty back roads that are fun to drive on, good sidewalks. And then plowing is generally sufficient and traffic isn't bad midday. And then also like the small quality of life features, I'd like to say, like if there's 2 turn lanes right next to each other, like the little dotted white line through intersections and stuff. And then dislikes, the main comment was the horrid traffic at the start and the end of the school day, the IHS and IMS. And basically it's because there's 1,000 cars at each school and it's going along a 2-lane road. And then the unprotected lefts into the church parking lot and the gravel lot that a lot of us have to take, otherwise we're going to be late to school. And that kind of ends up causing traffic to stop momentarily, which just builds traffic down 2nd Avenue heading to Sunset. And then a lot of parents drop off their kids when they could just send them on the bus. So an idea that someone proposed was making a paid pass that you have to purchase to be able to drop off your kids at school using a car. And then also stricter enforcement in the main parking lot of Issaquah High School at the start of first period and after lunch, because I've heard from a lot of people, like right at lunch, everybody drives to like go get food or whatever outside of the school. And then people move their cars into the main lot of the school that are not allowed to park in that main lot of the school. And then people who pay to park in the main lot of the school can't use their parking. Yeah, and then also just generally more comments about the dislikes of traffic of like Front Street and Gilman and downtown Issaquah. And then like some potholes and then some badly timed traffic lights. And then also like a lot of my Highlands friends were complaining that the snow and ice mitigation with the recent storm was not enough in some neighborhoods and it was unsafe to drive. And that's it. Thank you.
That's a very good detailed report.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions?
Cynthia, you're on mute.
I didn't mean to raise my hand. I meant to clap. That was amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions?
You should ask them what they think about road dieting. Explain to them it's narrowing roads.
Oh, yeah.
You'll get a pretty clear response there.
Yeah, I don't think people like that.
I like the idea and the comment that some of them had about having a permit to drop off kids to
Yeah.
have people think twice about driving to school, drop the kid off, and put them on the bus.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Especially like middle school, like for me, a big reason I don't take the bus is because it's so cramped. Like I can't sit normally in the bus and I'm not even that tall. I have to like sit sideways and stuff. So it's just like, I'd rather just drive where it's like, I can like just relax more. Whereas being like cramped with a bunch of like middle schoolers and stuff with the bus. But like for the middle school age kids, they have like, they're small, they can fit on the bus. So they should just take the bus.
I know how that feels because I went on a couple of field trips and no seats.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, in that case, do we have any other business or announcements? Okay. In that case, we are adjourned at 7:45.
It's good. I guess I was going to ask, in the future,